Welcome to Armchair Expat, the podcast meant to get you out of your lazy boy and into your new life abroad. I'm Shannon Acton, founder of Bargain Homes Abroad, and I'm riding shotgun as we chase the dream of life beyond borders. Each episode, we'll hear stories from people who've left their comfort zone to explore the world. They'll share their highs, their lows, and their in-betweens, all meant to lovingly light a fire under your bum, so you can stop dreaming about it and start living it. So if you're stuck in your comfy recliner, scrolling through dreamy destinations, wondering what if, it's time to swap that raggedy old armchair for a one-way ticket. Let's freaking go, people. In 2021, Allison Baxley and her family packed up their Brooklyn life and landed in Cascais, Portugal, with no scouting trip and 2 small kids in tow. What started as a pandemic-fueled dream became a full-on lifestyle shift, rooted in slowing down, building community, and embracing imperfection. In this episode, Allison shares what it really took to move abroad. Hint, Facebook groups and a lot of Googling. How her kids adjusted, and why Portugal still feels like the right choice, even 4 years later. We also chat about her blog, her self-care renaissance, and the surprising ups and downs of building a new life from scratch. Let's get into it. Enjoy. Hello, Allison. Welcome to the Armchair Expat podcast.
I am so happy to be here. Finally.
I know. I'm so excited to talk to you. It's been a little bit since we've caught up, so there's so much to learn and see. But why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of who you are, where you're from, and then we'll dive into how you ended up in Portugal.
Yes. Okay. So my name is Allison. I'm American. I came from New York and I now live in Portugal, and we've been here for going on 4 years. So this summer will be 4 years, which is insane. It's gone by so quickly. I mean, we're already looking at, what happens when we hit the mark where we can apply for citizenship. So just really excited about that whole bureaucratic process. But really, it's been a really, really, really quick 4 years, and the next year is going to go by super quick as well. So yeah, it's one of those things where we've just got so comfortable and happy here that it's just flown by.
Can you tell me a little bit about your life in the States prior to moving? Like, kind of what was the impetus to start looking abroad?
Yeah, a few things actually. Before having kids, so my daughter is 9 and my son is just turned 6. Before having kids, we had moved abroad a few times for specific jobs, but we were only in temporary gigs, right? Like we're only going to be there for 6 to 8 months, or we're only going to be there for 3 months. So there was always that comfort of knowing like, okay, well, I have somewhere to go home to. And this is just an adventure. And that was supposed to happen in 2020. We were gearing up to move to Budapest for 1 year for a job that my husband was taking. And COVID hit. And then we had to really figure out, what was important to us. And at that point, we had been so excited to take the kids abroad and to introduce them to living internationally, traveling more, specifically through Europe, all the things that we had done pre-kids. And while we had traveled with them, we hadn't ever lived anywhere other than Brooklyn. So COVID hits and we're rethinking our entire lives, as many people did during that time. Everybody started, making bread. And I was thinking about, buying a farm in Portugal and going off grid, like crazy, crazy thoughts. But when we couldn't move abroad because of the job and we had no idea how long it was going to take for things to get back to normal, for another opportunity like this to pop up for us, we decided to just make it happen on our own. And in a really quick 5-minute conversation, we decided Portugal was the place because it was our favorite place that we'd ever been. And then from there, we had to backtrack and say, okay, can someone just move to Portugal? How does one move to Portugal? And then we figured it out from there.
And what kind of resources did you use to kind of look into that process once you had decided on Portugal?
I started in Facebook groups. I did a little bit of online research, but at the time, there's so many more resources out there now. But 4 years ago, it was really just popping up on the radar of Americans. There had been a bit of an exodus of retirees who were going to Portugal, but not so many young families like there are now. And so a lot of the information out there was about the golden visa, which is an expensive option, also time consuming, and not so much information about some of the other visa options like the D7, which we did, which is a passive income visa. Now they have a D8, which is a digital nomad visa. So there's a lot more information out there now. But yeah, I started with a little bit of online research, and then I dove into some expat groups on Facebook because I had done that for our Budapest move, trying to get some information about living in Budapest with kids and things like that. And it kind of just snowballed from there. We ended up hiring an immigration lawyer who helped us a lot. And then just really reaching out to people who were in the process and a few steps ahead of us, so you could kind of get an idea of what they just went through, specifically in our market. So we had to apply through the VFS office in New York because was our delegated area. And so finding a few people who were just slightly ahead of us in the process in New York and could really help answer any immediate questions, like what did the consulate say when you took this document, that kind of thing.
And how long did the process take once you kind of made that decision, started doing your research, and then actually went to Portugal as a family?
From the time that we decided to make the move to the time we made the move was about 1 year. But we took the first 6 months to just kind of mull it over in our heads. What do we want this new life to look like? Is this really a permanent change that we're making? Do we plan to come back to the States? Like some of the bigger picture questions. So the first 6 months was really just sort of acclimating our minds to this idea that we're going to move abroad. And then actual planning, you should plan for about 6 months of gathering documents, getting things certified appropriately, scheduling appointments with the BFS office or whoever you're submitting your application through, things like that.
Yeah. So how did you decide where to go in Portugal? I know you said it was always kind of a favorite when you would go and travel, but actually thinking about moving there and living there, how did you approach that?
Randomly, I mean, I don't know. Internet research again. We knew coming from Brooklyn and being in New York for almost 12 years, we did not want to be in a big city. So, and not that Lisbon even compares to New York City, but we didn't want the hustle and bustle. We really wanted to have something that felt more small town, residential, more space, slower pace of life, that kind of thing. So started looking at places that fit those criteria. And then as we started thinking about the kids with schooling, trying to figure out, okay, do we want to do an international school? Do we want to throw them into a public school if they don't speak the language? So a lot of questions around that. And a lot of parents face this sort of chicken and egg situation. Do I pick the location and then find a school, or do I find a school that I love and let that dictate the location? And we landed somewhere in the middle because we knew Cascais, which is where we are. It's just outside of Lisbon. We knew it had a lot of international schools in the area, and that was where we were leaning. So we figured Cascais would be a location that had enough options around that we could find a school that we liked.
And since this was all during kind of the COVID era, right, when you were doing this research, you didn't get to go and look. You just kind of had to use the internet as your main resource.
And I envy people who take the time and the resources to make at least one, but many people multiple scouting trips. They really do their due diligence. We're much more fly by the seat of our pants. We just decide to do something and then we make it happen. It's not the first time we've made a big move like this. We moved straight out of college. We moved to Chicago. Then we were in Chicago and one day said, you know what, we're a little homesick and we want to be close to family. Let's move back to Texas. And within 30 days, we were back in Texas. So it's our style to just be a little bit more go with the flow with some of those things. But a lot of people take a lot of time and put a lot of effort into making sure that they see the places that they're interested in, try living there versus just feeling like you're on vacation somewhere, and then, seeing if it's really the right place for them.
And so at the time your kids were 2 and 4 when you made the move? Is
I
that
think my daughter was 5 at the time, but yeah.
okay? So do you have any advice for people that are looking to move with kids? Because I'm sure there are quite a few that are kind of like, oh, what is the transition like? I don't know if we should do this. What would you tell someone who is moving with small children or even older children?
The younger the child is, the more resilient I think they are. I mean, all kids are pretty resilient, but the younger they are, the less they're going to remember really what happened. So my son knows that we used to live in the United States. He knows that we used to live in Brooklyn. He has no recollection of ever being there. And when we went back 2 summers ago, where he theoretically would have been old enough to recognize some familiar surroundings, he still had no clue where we were. He's just like, this is a great playground. I'm like, yes, we used to come to this playground every day. You don't remember? Nope. Okay. Um, and the older they get, I have some friends who moved with like middle school and high school age kids. I think it can be a bit harder to leave friends back home. It can be a bit harder once they get past a certain age to pick up the language as quickly as the younger kids do. But overall, I've seen, a lot of kids in different age ranges thrive completely.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
my kids love being here, and my son is practically Portuguese, and my daughter and him are both fluent already. So
What would you say, just kind of from a parent's point of view, what should they consider when they're moving abroad?
I would consider finding some people who you can meet up with immediately that have kids around your same age. So maybe working through contacts with the school that you chose, and find some people that might be in the same class as them. Find people on Facebook groups to see, if there's anyone who wants to meet up and let the kids play, and just, allow them to dive in with something that feels kid friendly and fun.
Mm.
So making new friends can be difficult, especially for adults. But I think kids, it's so much easier for them to just meet a new person and immediately they get along. So having that experience, we did that, and we made friends with several of the parents from our school. Got here within 1 week, had a big dinner party at our house, let the kids play, and the rest is history, I guess. But um, and then I would say giving them something that feels familiar, bringing something with you that feels familiar, whether that's toys or stuffed animals, or maybe, I mean, the sheets probably won't fit, but something from their room that, a pillow that they love, things like that, letting them pack their own toys in their suitcase so that they feel like they're making decisions and they can be part of it. I think that's a huge
Mhm.
thing.
I love that. So, what did you decide on when you were looking at schools? Did you decide with an international school or a local public school?
My biggest thing was I wanted them to immerse in Portuguese culture and learn the language as quickly as possible so that it felt good for them, but without traumatizing them. Like, I didn't want to put them straight into a public school where it's all in Portuguese. Depending on which public school you're in, the Portuguese as a second language can be better or worse, just really depending on the program that they have. Um, but I also didn't want to put them in an international school that only taught Portuguese once or twice a week, right? Like where it's just more of a second language that they're picking up slowly. So I really focused on bilingual schools, which there are not a lot of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One was in totally different location, and then there were two basically next door to each other. One is a British school, and one was um, at the time a private Portuguese school that was transitioning to be international school at the secondary level. So that's where we ended up. And it's been amazing because they've learned Portuguese, but there's still plenty of English. And even though I would consider it an international school, it has a really good sort of Portuguese culture within it, with the teachers, with the way that they celebrate Portuguese culture and all of that.
How did you find community, especially as a parent and with your children? What was kind of your approach and process to really diving into the local community?
It was really important for me, like I said, to find friends for my kids before we moved. And so I had just put a post up in one of the Facebook groups. Actually, somebody else had posted in a Facebook group saying, "Where's everybody sending their kids to school?" It was a like Qashqai's specific group. And so a lot of people had commented, "Aprendices, aprendices, aprendices." And I did as well. And then of about, I think there were maybe 8 or 10 families who were all planning to move the same summer. They all had kids around the same age as my daughter. And so we planned a meetup at one of the parks and just all got together and, let the kids play, shared a few cocktails. Everybody was feeling, really friendly. And then from there, when the kids started school, about half of those kids were in one class and half were in my daughter's class. And the people who ended up being in the same classes together sort of gravitated toward each other because their kids were hanging out more often. Um, and not only did the kids become really good friends, we got along really well with the parents and they became our circle. So it happened very naturally for us, but we did take some steps to make that happen in the beginning, and then it flowed from there. So I think you just have to be a little proactive in putting yourself out there, which I'm an introvert. It's not easy for me to do, but moving abroad sort of brings that out of you, I think.
Yeah. On a personal level, what have you done to kind of get into and find your social circle outside of kind of the parent groups and stuff like that?
Um, oh gosh, there's, a few networking things. So I have my blog. I see a lot of comments coming through from that and emails. And so I have people reaching out to me. "Oh, I'll be in Qashqai's. Can we have coffee?" That kind of thing. I've had, a few interactions that lead to more, friendship there. Um, Friends of friends. Sometimes you don't realize it's a very small expat community. So everyone knows someone who knows someone else. And then it's like they say 6 degrees of separation. I think here in Qashqai's, the expat community is like 2 degrees of separation. Um, and it feels like it's not a very small town, but it feels that way because you can be out and about and see people that you know a lot, which um, in New York rarely happens. So it's been an interesting sort of throwback to being from a small town. Um, yeah, I think just finding people who have common interests. I play pickleball now, so I have a few friends who play pickleball. Yeah.
Okay. What's been the biggest challenge for you, kind of personally or as a parent, moving abroad, specifically to Portugal? Like, what has been kind of something that maybe surprised you that was a bigger challenge than you expected?
For me personally, learning the language has been something that I have sort of beat myself up about in the last couple months to a year because I love learning languages. I pick up things pretty quickly, but because I live in an area, because in Portugal, so many people do speak English, but because I live in an area that has a lot of foreigners and a lot of um, people who are, in the tourism industry and hospitality and things like that. So many of them speak English and are willing to and happy to, not put you out of place by asking you to speak Portuguese. It makes it very easy to let that thing go. And you get so busy when you move here. You're setting up your house, you're getting the kids in school, you're trying to find your comfort zone. Um, Going outside of your comfort zone and speaking a foreign language is hard. And I wish I would have taken it more seriously before now, but I did sign up for my, it's called the SIPL exam, which is what you have to pass in order to get Portuguese citizenship. And so I signed up for that in November, which has put a hard deadline on me to like really get serious. And I find myself listening to it more, listening to audiobooks, podcasts. I'm doing online lessons. I have practice exams that I look at. I'm speaking more in public. I'm initiating conversations in Portuguese more, which helps because it sets a precedent with the waiter or with the person at the bank or whatever that I'm willing to try. Um, But I love when I find myself in a conversation with someone who really doesn't speak English, because then I'm forced. Like, I have no option. I could pull out my phone and translate, but I refuse. Like, no, I'll make it somehow.
Yeah.
But that has been, for me, one of the biggest obstacles for sure.
Mm. Did you, when you set out to go to Portugal, did you want to take that path to citizenship, or did that just kind of naturally progress once you guys got kind of, into the community and decided, yeah, this is the place we want to be?
As soon as I found out that it was an option, I knew that that was something that we would pursue, because when we moved away from the States, I think it wasn't necessarily a permanent, like, I'll never move back here ever again. But we also knew we really enjoy the European lifestyle, and that if we could give ourselves an option to have, whether it's in Portugal or other parts of Europe, have that option to stay in Europe longer, we wanted to pursue that. So it wasn't something that I was looking for when I chose a place to live. But when I found out that Portugal, it only takes 5 years of residency to qualify, I thought, wow, that's 5 years is nothing compared to, a lot of other places are 7, 8, 10 years. Um, so I think you can stick any place out for 5 years, even if you hate it. I mean, of course, that's not the case for us, but we don't even plan to leave Portugal anytime soon. I imagine when the kids go off to college or something like that, we may want to be more mobile. But for now, it's Portugal. And if we can get that passport and just keep our options open, especially with what is all happening back in the US, I like to have that backup plan.
Yeah, I don't blame you. What does your daily life look like now that you're in Portugal and you've been there for 4 years? How does it look, and how does it compare to that when you were in the States?
The first couple of years, at least the first year, it was a little more hectic than I think we were prepared for, because there's a lot of bureaucracy that you have to deal with. If you're just going to live somewhere, look, I lived in Berlin for 6 months. I knew I was leaving in 6 months, so there wasn't the stress of, and everything was taken care of by the job that we were there for. So there wasn't the stress of visas, health numbers, getting health insurance, like all these things were taken care of for us, and we knew it was a very limited time. I mean, I didn't even really make a lot of friends while I was there, because I just knew that it didn't it didn't seem like it was fair to the people that I would just be leaving in 6 months anyway. Um, Whereas here, 1 year in, we're still dealing with, having to get COVID shots, and how do you do that? And, just things that are so unfamiliar to us. Furnishing an entire house, which we were not prepared to do. We had wanted to find a furnished rental, some things that were a bit out of our control, buying a car, things like that we just hadn't quite thought all the way through. So I would say it was a bit hectic in the beginning. And then as we settled in, got pretty comfortable just being here and feeling almost like, in New York, I call it the hamster wheel of, like, you go to work, you got to pick up your kids, you got to do the bath, you got to do dinner, and then you put them to bed, and then you do the whole thing over every day, every day, every day. It got to that point here a little bit for me personally. I can't speak for my husband or the kids, but it started to feel a bit too rhythmic, and too much like, I wasn't taking advantage of being here enough. And I was working a lot on the blog, and I was putting a lot of time and effort into that. And as a solopreneur, as a business, you work for yourself. There are no work times versus non-work times. The to-do list never ends. You feel like you need to just keep going when you're trying to grow a business. And I got stuck a little bit there. But in the last year or so, I started to prioritize things that I was leaving out of my daily life. So enjoying going, and walking at the beach. I live in a beach town, and I was only going to the beach once every couple of weeks in the summer, in the winter, probably almost never. And just enjoying what this town has to offer. And also, allowing myself the space and the time to step away from my computer, because the blog will always be there. Work will always be there. I've learned at this point, it's never going to end. So I can put it down and be present here in Portugal. And I think that has allowed me to just do more things that make me happy and enjoy Portugal and Cascais more than I was sort of in that middle space. And in the beginning, it was just really chaotic. So
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I think, just from a perspective of always working and go, 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 and having to shift into a completely different kind of mindset, it's easy to just do what you're doing somewhere and then to pick up and move and keep continuing to do it what you're doing, right? And then you're like going, wait, this isn't what plan was. This isn't, but it's hard to kind of retrain yourself, right?
a lot of things you have to retrain. I mean, as an American specifically, but slowing down that, the hustle culture is not here. There is no hustle culture here. There's startup culture, which is a bit like hustle culture, but it's not, people working 18 hours a day trying to, do whatever they're doing. It's long lunches, it's walks by the beach, it's, taking the weekend to go, take the kids down to the water park, things like that. But it, you do have to sort of force yourself to, I say, think like a Portuguese. You have to think like a Portuguese. Like, do I want to take this long lunch? Would a Portuguese person turn that down? Absolutely not. Of course I want to take this long lunch and I'm going to enjoy it and allow myself to enjoy it. Um, but there's other things like healthcare, even getting my car fixed. You don't trust the mechanic because you're so used to people scamming you. And maybe even as a foreigner here, people do get scammed a little bit. So you have to think like, okay, maybe it's better if I ask my Portuguese friend for a recommendation of where to go, or have them come with me and help me navigate that situation. When you go to the hospital, you pay what you like. What you're asked to pay is a fair and normal price for something versus being hit with crazy bills, 6 months later, and you don't know what happened, and you're tens of thousands of dollars in debt at this point. Like, that kind of stuff doesn't happen here. So I go to the doctor more often. I see specialists. I get tests done because I know that I'm paying X amount for that and it's not going to come back to bite me in the end. And it's been more preventative that way.
Yeah, I feel like everything is just kind of a change, and it may not feel safe at first because it's not what you're used to. It's like not in this little little box, but kind of get used to it. So you mentioned the blog. Let's talk a little bit about kind of what you're doing when you're there, how you have some resources to help people, and then we'll kind of talk about your fun projects.
Yes. So within the last 6 months, within the last year, I launched a Move to Portugal checklist, which is a very comprehensive checklist of all the things you really need to think about when you're planning and executing a move to Portugal. So it goes beyond just picking which visa you want or that you think you'll qualify for, finding somewhere to live and maybe navigating healthcare. Like, I see these topics come up a lot. Like, I cover a lot of different things. And then which you can get this for free at the blog. You just have to sign up for my email list and I'll send it straight to you. And then I took that and I expanded that. So I just basically took that checklist, broke it down one topic at a time. And so when you sign up for the checklist, I'll send you the checklist. It's printable. You can literally check things off. It's really nice. It has resources embedded in it with links. So it's really easy I don't do a lot of the physical things. I don't go get your NIF for you and I don't go look for houses for you, but I know people who do all these things and I trust these people. So I connect you to them. But I took that checklist and I broke it down into an entire welcome series of emails that does the exact same thing. It just goes into a lot more depth than, it's basically an ebook in a welcome email series. So, which is also free. You just have to sign up for my email list. I'll give you the checklist and you'll get, I think at this point, I'll probably add to it, but at this point, there's 21 emails that come to you every day or two that break down one topic at a time. You can save the whole series and you have everything you need right in your inbox.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable. And I'm on your email list and I got all those. And the nice thing is you are a connector, right? Like, you have found the resources, you've done the work over the last 4 years of meeting people and vetting people. And like, so you've taken care of that so other people don't have to. And then you're just kind of connecting them to it and providing them the information without having to go to 20, 30, 40 different sites and, trusting Chat GPT and Google to give them information.
I do. I see people all the time on the Facebook groups saying, "Have you ever heard of this company? Are they legit? Do they, and I know the company. I'm like, "Yeah, they're fine. They're fine. Go for it." But how would one know that if they're just starting out in this process? It's really overwhelming because that business model of relocation experts and people has exploded since I've been here, and all targeting, Americans. And it's just really, it's tough to know if you don't know. And of course, I know because I've been here and I've seen all these different things pop up. But yeah, I do connect people. And the whole point I started the blog was because I couldn't find the resources that I needed all in one place. And I thought, well, maybe I'm not the only one. Maybe I can help other people by telling my story. And then the more information I gathered, the more I could make more of a complete picture for people. So that's the whole reason I started the blog in the first place, is just to help people be a little less overwhelmed and a little more confident when they're making choices, because they're talking, and I say talking, but they're hearing from someone who's done it already.
Yeah, exactly. And so you touched a little bit more on kind of the self-care aspect of things. You also have another project that kind of looks like on the self-care.
So as I mentioned, the move to Portugal help scene has really exploded. There's a lot of people, even more people now, that are still coming in, and they're still coming in, and they're still coming in, and creating these offerings for people, which I think is great. Go for it. I have the blog. I have a lot of information there. I'll continue to add to that, but I have 2 projects that I'm working on. So I wanted to do something that was more hands-on with people. So until now, I've just been an information gatherer, and then I disperse the information in a nice way that's helpful. But I wanted to do something that was more hands-on, helpful with people. So a few partners and I have gotten together, and we are creating a business that will help people get their home set up from abroad. So for people who are moving to Portugal, many of them have to have a lease in place or buy a house before they're able to actually move here permanently. So they have an apartment that they're paying for that sits empty. And when they get here, they have to do all the work of furnishing the apartment and settling in, which is really stressful because you end up spending more money on things that you don't need. You buy things you don't really even like. You don't know how long delivery lead times are. There's a lot of stress involved in that. I went through that for 6 months when I moved here. But what we're aiming to do is to help people do that while they're waiting for their visas to be approved. So they've already rented the place or they've already bought the home, and then we can help them with the design and the setup of making sure they have beds to sleep on and nice sheets and towels and dishes and plates and things like that, so that they walk into a place and it already feels like home from the beginning.
I didn't know that was coming down the pipe. I love that. I love that. I think that, I mean, it fills a need, right? Obviously. And it kind of is something you think about, but you don't think about, and making it so much easier for people. And let's talk a little bit about finding places, to live, because you kind of touched on a topic that maybe people would be interested in. Is you do have to find a place and have a lease or purchase a property in order to apply for a visa, correct?
For certain visas, yes. Not every visa, but yes, for the D7 and the D8, which are 2 of the most popular visas, you do have to have long-term housing secured with your application for your visa. So typically a visa application process will take 3 to 4 months from the time you submit the application until the time you're approved. You have to have that 12-month lease to submit with your application. So you potentially sitting there for 4 months, paying rent on this place and or have bought this place and it's sitting empty. And then you show up and have the stress of having to figure out what to do with it. So we're going to help people with that problem. But it is something that I went through. A lot of people, they used to allow you to have a short term, say an Airbnb or something like that. And you could maybe just book that for 3 or 4 months to show that you have somewhere to come to. But during COVID, they upped the requirements to really weed out the people who were maybe not going to stay, and to have people show more of a commitment if they're applying for the visa, that they were really committed to being in Portugal.
Do you help also with finding the place, or is it just kind of the transition of once someone has found a place, you can help them kind of settle in and find?
We're not going to be doing home searches or apartment searches, but we have a lot of reliable partners between the three of us. We have a lot of people that we've worked with directly and who we've been working with over the last couple of years. So depending, I mean, we will be in the Cascais, Lisbon, like greater Lisbon area to start until we can expand. But we have a lot of resources for helping to find the home. And we're going to be working with realtors back and forth in that regard as well. So when they have someone who needs someone to help them set up their house, they know that they can rely on us. And then if we have someone who says, we want you to help us set up a house, but we don't have a house yet, and we say, okay, let's get you connected to someone who can help you.
Yeah. As you've gone through the process, what is maybe kind of your number one tip for someone looking for a place? What would you say, where to start? And let's say a place to rent to start with.
Yeah, it's tough. And I think knowing neighborhoods and knowing sort of city layouts is really important. It's not, I had never been to Cascais before we decided to live here, and we never, were able to make that scouting trip. So my immigration lawyer, who at the time I thought it was a little bit over the top for her to offer this, but she said, I know you're working with a realtor, that's great, but when you find a place that you think you like, let me know where it is and I will go look at it, at least from the outside, and tell you, like, is this a good neighborhood? Is this street like a terrible street to live on, and why? And those kinds of things. So I think, well, there are a lot of really reliable and trustworthy realtors and brokers. There are people who also just want to get a property rented. And so they may or may not be honest. Of course, I trust all the people that I work with, but who knows who you're working with. So having someone who can help you in that way, to just have that locals perspective that's not tied to your financially tied to whether you choose this place or not, I think is really.
Yeah. Is it, what are the rental contracts typically look like when you're doing a longer term? Is it 12 months, or is it usually longer with an out, or how does that differ kind of from what we're used to in the States?
The Portuguese love really long leases. That's it. They're just now starting to understand that foreigners coming in are not willing to do a 10-year lease. That would be a typical Portuguese lease. But what they do have in every lease, no matter the length of it, is after 1/3 of the time has been gone through, then you can put in notice that you want to break the lease. So every lease has that clause in it. But the shorter the lease is. So for someone who's moving and they only want to do a 12-month lease, let's say you get here and the place is awful and you just can't stand to live there, or you need to get out as quickly as possible for whatever reason, a 12-month lease, after 4 months, you could give notice, which I think the notice is 2 months. So really a 12-month lease could be as short as 6 months. If you really had a need for that, you can make that happen. Or you can negotiate and put things in the lease, that are not typical if the owner is willing to work with you. It just depends on the person. And we put in a clause in our lease that said if we are not approved for our visa, then we get all of the money that we've paid up front back, because otherwise we would have lost deposits and prepaid rents, which are very, very big here. It's usually,
yeah, I was going to say, what is the typical commitment, kind of the financial commitment coming in for a lease?
It's pretty similar to the States now, because there are so many people who are coming in for these shorter leases. But first and last month's rent and a security deposit of 1 to 3 months rent. And really, that is really negotiable. So you just have to work with your realtor and with the owner to figure that out. But sometimes they want you to pay multiple prepaid rents. So we actually ended up renting 2 places. One fell through, but we had already paid a bunch of money. So we paid 1 month security deposit, and then we paid 6 months up front. And then the whole thing fell through because the owner sold the house, and we found out and said, okay, well, we want our money back. But we had already put in to the lease that if we didn't get our visa, we would get all of that money back, because you are paying, it's a large sum. And then the next place where we live still to this day was much more reasonable. We did, I think, first and last month's rent, and no, a deposit and the first month's rent, and then we did, I think, 3 months prepaid. So it's a good indication, if your landlord is willing to work with you on these things, how good of a landlord they're going to be. So if they're being really hard-nosed about certain things, then it might be a red flag. So just to keep in mind.
Good tip. Yeah. And what is your other project that you're working on?
So my other project is, I wanted to step to the side of, I don't want to say step away, but I wanted to step to the side of Portugal as my brand. Of course, I have my Instagram that's all about Portugal. It's connected to the blog, Renovating Life. But when I started Renovating Life, the idea that sparked the name of that was, it actually came to me in a dream, and I woke up and put a note in my phone and then went back to sleep. Renovating Life. But the idea was, it's a quality of life improvement project, and I'm going to renovate the things in my life in a way that makes me happier. And moving to Portugal was going to facilitate some of those things, but it's not the reason why. It was just going to allow me to be able to do those different things, not working so much, being in nature more, things like that. Mm-hmm. And the blog kind of got away from that, because the blog is really about helping people move to Portugal. And I've kept it that way. I could have expanded it in a lot of different ways, but I really tried to keep it to how to move to Portugal and what life in Portugal is like. I do want to add some travel content, and I've added a little bit here and there, but I never got to the point of really digging into how my life has changed because of being in Portugal, or because of making a move abroad in general. And so I'm trying to, with the new Instagram and some other things I have coming, get back to the heart of what Renovating Life is really about. And over the last year, I've been on sort of a personal growth journey, self-development, health and fitness. I read a book called Outlive, and it really sort of opened my eyes to thinking about longevity and, what do I want my life when I'm 80 to look like? Do I want to be frail and needing help for every little thing, or do I want to be strong and healthy and able to live independently for longer? So that was a book that really opened my eyes to a lot of things, and I thought, I'm in my early 40s. The time is now to start making the changes that I need to make in order to make that 80-year-old live the life that she wants. And so I started this new Instagram because I didn't want to confuse the messaging on the Portugal side. So I wanted to have a place where I could just come straight with product recommendations, health and fitness info, things that I'm doing that are making me happy and my life, and how I am renovating my life from the perspective of wellness. So that's really what that's all about. And I'm working with a new skincare brand skincare and wellness brand that I'll be promoting, but I'm also going to be sharing a lot of recommendations that have nothing to do with that are just the things that I use every day, the things that make me happy, that make me feel good, but daily habits that I've created over the last year. So yeah, it's just like, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, it's more personal.
Yeah.
I like
It's
it.
me.
What's
It's
lighting
me.
you up right now? Like, what is making you happy right now?
I'm walking almost every day. I started walking more consistently about 6 to 8 months ago, and I started wanting to get in shape for this trip, like a girls' trip I was going on, and then it just turned into I start to obsess a little bit about things, and I read that book, and I get really like nerded out on health and fitness and things like that, and I've kind of like Portuguese. I've never learned a second language well enough to say that I'm fluent. And that's where I want to get with Portuguese. Well, when it comes to health and fitness, I've never dedicated myself to it in a way that felt permanent and felt consistent. I waver. I do a little bit and then I slack off a little bit. And then I do a little bit and I slack off a little bit. And as an athlete, when I was young, um, I had people helping me do that, and I've gotten back to that. So I hired a personal trainer. I work with a nutritionist. I'm working on um, dietary changes. So like I like to eat food I want to eat, but what can I swap that will just make it a little bit better for today? What are some daily habits? I used to not ever eat breakfast. And after working with my nutritionist, she said, no, if you're training, you have to eat some protein. And I mean, this is my new mantra, protein is life.
Yes, I know. Everyone's right.
Yeah, so I think just feeling like I'm doing just small things every day, but doing them every day. So like even just remembering to take my vitamins every day. This is something that I buy a lot of supplements. I buy a lot of skincare products, and then they just sit there. And so I'm
Mhm.
working really hard to just make like these little changes, but make them consistently for long enough. Like now when I don't go for my walk, I'm out of my skin. Like, what am I going to do today? Like, how am I going to get my steps? Like, sure, I can do a little workout, but if it's pouring down rain, so I joined a gym so I could go walk on the treadmill if I have to. I don't want to, but I want to walk.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the nice thing about where you're living is in general, kind of like where I live right now in Southern California, you do have access to outdoor activities almost, 365 days a year. Yeah, you get some rain here and there,
The
but
last
like
couple of weeks
we're
have been,
experiencing and you're experiencing as well, I think.
yeah,
But for the most part, that's the nice thing about making lifestyle changes is a little bit easier.
yeah. And being here in Portugal is allowing that to happen because if I was still in New York, and we needed two full incomes, and I was working full time, getting those walks in would be really difficult. I used to walk to work actually in New York because there was no other time. I would walk for 30 minutes to go to work and walk 30 minutes home. But I also have kids now. I can't go to the gym at 8 o'clock at night. It's not, it doesn't make sense for me. So having the time freedom during the day to prioritize these things and finally, like I said, I was stuck a bit, like trying to work too hard. Finally, having the mindset of I am going to prioritize this because it's important to me.
Hmm. Yep. Yep, I totally agree. And good for you. Good for you for recognizing that because I think a lot of people just kind of continue on and don't make those changes. And I love the fact that you started an Instagram for it, kind of one to show other people and to inspire other people, but also to probably hold yourself accountable a little bit too, right?
And the Portugal Instagram um, is great. I love it, but it has a very specific sort of like feel, and it has the way I share information there is different than the way I want to share this other side of me. So I wanted to have like, a new branding, just a new feel for all of it, and then share more and share more often in a way that feels easy and that I can be consistent with and see
Yeah.
how it grows.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have such a creative side, right? That's really coming through and you can be you're kind of more flexibility and freedom in how you can express yourself and I love that. Yeah. Cool. Any last things that you want to share with any words of wisdom or advice you would give that you want to leave?
I always say, people say, what do you tell people when they're wondering if they should, can they move abroad? Like, is it something that's going to be good for them or for their kids? People really struggle with, am I going to traumatize my kids by doing this to them? And I just always say, go for it. It will change you in the best ways and in ways that you have no clue. You might think it's going to change you, and it will, but it's going to change you even more than that. And it's going to open up doors and opportunities for you that you'll never be able to imagine if you stay where you are.
I think that's a beautiful way to end. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you
I
for.
love this conversation and you're an inspiration. What can I say?
Oh, thank you so much. change. I love your stuff. I love dreaming about bargain homes, and I haven't found mine yet, but one day I will.
And that's it for today's episode. Thanks for listening and spending some time with us. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Make sure to follow the show and leave a review. It will really help others find us. And if you're dreaming about a life abroad or already living it, I'd love to hear from you. You can connect with me on Instagram at bargainhomesabroad or on our website, www.bargainhomesabroad.co. Until next time, keep exploring, keep dreaming, and I'll see you back in the armchair soon. Bye-bye.